right before the Gulf War kicked off, the U.S. Army decided we need a better pair of boots to equip our soldiers in the desert. So, development quickly went underway, and what they came out with was a redesigned jungle boot. So the jungle boot, originally designed in the early 1960s for Vietnam, was meant for a tropical environment, as akin to its name, jungle. But, so what they did for a jungle boot was they got rid of a bunch of leather. Leather does not do well in the jungle, so the original boots they'd been fielding were made of 100% leather. And they quickly got rid of that, and they made most of it of a canvas material. And eventually they started replacing bits of leather with nylon. This was originally, on the original jungle boots, was made of leather. They got replaced with nylon. They had some ankle reinforcements. They changed the style of sole. And they put a spike-protected metal plate in the bottom of them. Because, well, apparently Northern forces in Vietnam were making spike traps that would go through the bottom of the boot, and, well, that's not very pleasant. So, over what they came up with by the end of Vietnam was this. Now, this has a Panama style of sole, nylon reinforcements on it, 2 little eyelets for drying out very quick, little vent eyelets, as you can see. And these were generally suitable. There was a few other types of boots being used throughout the 1970s and 1980s that were made of all leather, but these were well liked for a tropical environment. Well, it's pretty quickly realized that this is not suitable for a desert. First off, these eyelets could let in sand, though they'd have to be very fine sand particles to fit through that. It's not even close to the color of a desert, and you can't keep a shine well in the desert at all. So what they opted for was redesigning it, and also modernizing this design a bit, and they came out with this. Now, clearly, first off, you notice this thing is entirely sand-colored, which is good. It blends with the desert now. They redesigned the laces, so instead of having the old style of just metal eyelet, now they have speed laces on them. They got rid of the ventilation eyelets because, well, there's no water to get your boot wet. You don't need to dry it out quickly in a desert. But you don't want sand in your boot either. And then, for whatever reason, they chose the soles to be this chocolate brown color. Well, these started production in around October of 1990, and I've seen them made as late as January of 1991, before they eventually started redesigning them. The production overlaps a bit. I don't have the second type of boot, but I do have the third. Now, this is what they redesigned this to. So, the first noticeable change is up here. Got redesigned. Originally, it was just a strip of nylon, just like a jungle boot. Well, apparently that wasn't cutting it, and they redesigned it and added this thick padded section, which is, I guess, more comfortable. And then they also changed this chocolate-colored sole to a tan sole, which, honestly, it should have been like that from the start. Now, I said these are a third pattern. The difference between a third pattern and a second pattern style of boot is these reinforcements right here. On a third pattern, they're made of nylon, just like a first pattern. But on a second pattern, these are actually made of the same rough side out leather material. Now, these third pattern boots I've seen, and this is the earliest pair I've seen, if I'm being completely honest, though I'm not sure the actual production dates. These ones were made in December of 1996. And second patterns I've seen made as late as 1994. But I don't have a comprehensive chart of all the dates I've seen on them, so I can't tell you. These third pattern boots were made as late as 2003. Before then, in 2004, they got replaced, apparently, by the Army Combat Boot. Now, there's 2 types of Army Combat Boots. There's a hot weather Army Combat Boot, and there's a temperate weather Army Combat Boot. Now, this is a temperate weather Army Combat Boot. And as you can see, it's not even close to being the same design. These are lined with a waterproof Gore-Tex. And then they have a completely different style of sole made by Vibram. Now, the hot weather Army Combat Boot is almost a direct copy of this, but I believe it has ventilation eyelets on it again, because it turns out sand doesn't really get in through those. And they got rid of the sole. The sole just, again, doesn't do well in the desert. It was designed for mud. And they went to this style of sole. Sadly, I don't have a pair of Hot Weather Army combat boots, but they're not too hard to find. I've been meaning to get a pair, I just haven't gotten to it. But overall, that's U.S. military desert boots over the span of the 1990s. I should add to note that these are not very often seen in the Gulf War. It's mostly guys wearing these desert boots, these jungle boots. Though I got these ones from a Cab Scout vet who was in the Persian Gulf in Iraq. And then he said he never really wore them. I'm not quite sure why, I didn't ask. And then I have a picture of my uncle, who was a combat engineer. I have a picture of him wearing second pattern type boots. But in general, they're not as common as just the standard issue at the time jungle boot. Overall, that's just desert boots throughout the 90s, and I hope this clears a bit of confusion on them, as there's not too many good resources on them.